Ladies and gentlemen, for our next panel, our host is ALON ALROY. ALON is the co-founder and CMO of Bizzabo, an all-in-one event success platform and one of the fastest-growing event tech companies in the world. ALON was named one of the meeting industry's 40 under 40, as well as one of the top 10 Israeli CMOs. He was part of an exclusive NYC Venture Fellows program, and prior to founding Bizzabo, he was also one of the senior startup analysts at Plenum and was COO at Eudar Investments. ALON is a graduate of the prestigious Zell Entrepreneurship Program, and his writings can be found in a tremendous amount of places, including the Huffington Post, Fast Company, Fox Business News, Entrepreneur Inc., the Social Media Examiner, and Marketing Land. Without further ado, please put your hands together for ALON ALROY.
Hello. Hey. This is my, I think, sixth Taxi Talk. Very exciting for Liz and the team. Congratulations for a grand finale. And I'm very excited Liz asked me to invite two amazing organizations that we work with. So we thought, as a co-founder of Bizzabo, we work with thousands of event planners from all around the world, and we wanted two clients that are really representing amazing organizations. So we have Molly Reed, the Director of Events at Teach for America, and Steve Cobb, the co-organizer of #Sports. I'm very excited to invite them to join me on stage. I thought I'd let them present who they are because they're going to do that much better than me. But in general, I'll say that Steve is representing in a way, the independent event planner who is an entrepreneur, who decides to run just one of the best sports events in the country, in my mind. And Molly is in charge of events for an organization that I'm sure all of you know. I'll be happy if each of you can present yourself and your organization, and then why do you run events?
Sure. This on? Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so #Sports is a thought leadership platform and an annual innovation conference focused on helping sports professionals understand digital media technology, all that good stuff that's changing every industry. And we run this year, June 25th through the 27th is the event, so it's 66 days away. I'm very aware of that, thanks to Bizzabo's platform. It's exciting, obviously, doing a large-scale event. We have 2,000 attendees, 200 speakers. It's 3 days. So really, our company revolves around this large-scale event. We're just trying to grow it as big as possible, be as impactful as possible, changing the industry. We also have a daily newsletter that the company kind of spun out of, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely a unique perspective, especially being entrepreneurial and running this one event that's basically our entire business.
Yeah, so at Teach for America, we are a nonprofit. We believe that all kids deserve a high-quality education, and so to do that, we place teachers, which are either college graduates or career-changing professionals, in classrooms to teach in really high-needs areas for 2 years. Believing that passion that they develop in the 2 years will stay with them, and they'll continue to work towards educational equity for the rest of their lifetime. So our events are very, very mission-driven, and they range from anything like a recruitment event on a college campus where we're looking for more college juniors and seniors to join us, to very large 15,000-person professional development sessions, to small, intimate donor events or galas where we're looking to really raise a whole lot of money. So we have very distinct audiences and very distinct strategies that go along with them, but we push all of that out through a lot of the technology that we work with Bizzabo on.
Thank you very much. Liz talked earlier about event planners becoming entrepreneurs themselves and one day deciding to just run an event. So Steve, like what made you and your partner suddenly decide to run a conference?
Yeah, it was a long time coming. So our background is we created the first ever sports social media agency before Twitter existed. We were really one of the people that was trying to convince our industry that social media is going to change the way athletes connect with fans. And we, through the agency, were just feeding curated articles just from business development purposes. And we decided, hey, we should formalize this. We came up with a cool name. We thought #sports. And that was about 5 years ago.
And then Twitter stole your term.
Yeah, exactly. So we then continue to grow our awareness, and it's very interesting just the dynamic of it. As an agency, you're pitching people, but as B2B platform and as a conference, people are pitching you. We kind of like that. And then we got even more entrepreneurial and partnered with Google to do the first ever conference using their Hangouts platform that was really like trying to take it to a whole nother level. We had 200 speakers across 2 days, simultaneous Hangouts. So we actually cut our teeth from a program perspective from the virtual side and learned a lot. Ultimately, didn't make a lot of money. It was more of an awareness play. And we found ourselves, okay, looking at our industry, what isn't being addressed. And we thought there was a huge opportunity for just somebody that really focused on creating an industry-leading tentpole event that, similar to an advertiser maker, South by Southwest. Obviously, that's a far vision ahead of us, but that was really our goal, and we're still trying to figure it out. And but yeah, that's kind of what got us to where we are today.
Very cool. Molly, with Teach for America running so many events and really going all in for the in-person experience, how do you prove the value internally that those events are actually worthwhile?
Yeah, that is a great question. So being a nonprofit, every dollar we spend, we are on the hook for. So proving the ROI, the value of our events, is pretty key. And so we, as an organization, we have goals every 5 years. So all of our events must ladder up into one of those organizational, mission-driven goals, all of which have KPIs within them. But then when we look at our individual events, part of what we do is we really work up front to set our strategy and our event brief that sets all those goals and objectives from the get-go. So the way our team works is in like an in-house agency model. So a team will come to us and say, this is what we're trying to solve, and then we will partner with them on it. And we hear from people often, like, we want to increase awareness or we want to grow our reach, but spending the time up front to say, like, what does that mean? Like, how do you know if that's going to be successful? Are you looking for 5 new leads or 50 or 500 to really set those benchmarks? And then after the event, or as we're progressing, we know if we're actually on track towards hitting that. But our KPIs and our goals are quite specific to each type of event. So for recruitment, we're looking at number of leads, number of qualified candidates, and the percent that then submit an application. Whereas development, we're looking for a fundraising goal. And then for things like our professional development conferences, where we have year-over-year events, we'll look at year-over-year attendance. We'll look at attendance growth. And then a really important one for us as well is looking at the diversity of our attendee pool. And making sure that we're continuing to grow among diverse populations as well. So each of those KPIs is incredibly specific to the strategy and the goals of the event, which are set up front.
I think it's truly amazing to see such a big organization, a nonprofit, really defines their what is success for them and what are those key metrics that you guys follow. I think we have a majority here in the audience, people who run events for clients or independent event planners. Maybe Steve, you can share, how do you guys approach events in terms of data or defining your goals?
Sure. Yeah, we're definitely a data-driven, analytics-driven organization. Which is why it really does help to have a partner. We truly view you as a partner as far as your technology stack and the way that you work with us. We are content-driven. So we believe we have a brand in #sports, and we think the trend is it's not really a trend. It's happening that it's a year-round conversation, right? And so that started from our daily newsletter, and we kind of backed into the event. But we definitely knowing who's on the website, having very specific registration, attendee data, which sessions are people going to. It coincides with maybe the way that we program our event. We have over 100 sessions is based on which articles in our newsletter are driving the most traffic. So we, just being entrepreneurial, need to have data drive our decisions versus just what we feel. There's definitely a little bit of art and science to large scale events, and it's very much chicken and the egg. But we feel confident that by really kind of focusing on content marketing to build our brand and data analytics, it's gotten us to where we are today.
I like to think that there's a lot of art, but then we're trying to use technology to measure the art a little bit.
Exactly.
Given the collective experience of more than 10 years that you guys have together, how do you see the event industry? How do you think it has changed over the years? And maybe what are some of the trends that you see moving forward?
Yeah, I can start. So building off of what Steve just said, one thing that we've seen change and that will continue, I think, to develop is that it's no longer a one-time conversation within the event. It is a year-round conversation, and attendees are not segmenting what they hear from you on Instagram versus on your website versus in your email. It all has to build into one cohesive story, and their experience, if they have a bad experience on Instagram, even if you have a great event, like that all factors in together. So that's one thing that we've seen is really like the need to make sure you're telling a coherent story across all of your channels simultaneously. The other thing that we've seen a lot of is that attendees want and need to have information at their fingertips at all times, and the event app is like such a huge component of that, and fits into that story as well. So making sure that you have the right technology set up to push all of that out to make sure it's in line with your brand and the experience that you want people to have. That's a pretty big change that we have seen and kind of are still working to get at the forefront of.
I think the expectations of both attendees and sponsors have changed a lot throughout the years. Maybe in the past, sponsors wanted brand awareness, and they had enough just by having the logo on the lanyard. But these days, the sponsors, many of them are already millennials. They are speaking the data language. You work a lot with sponsors. How do you guys approach it?
Yeah, I think with our event being media friendly, that's what we thought was missing in our industry, is very closed door events, which have their value, but ours was really being an open platform to get in front of the industry and the press. We know that what drives our sponsorships is really programming. People want to speak, and being creative with the different assets that we have. But we put probably the most time into our prospectus, right, and kind of laying out what a value, and there are so many different types of values, so many different types of assets, and they all want leads, right? They want to figure out whether a lot of them believe that speaking and getting on a panel is what drives the best leads. We do still think that there's a whole other echelon of sponsors, prospective sponsors that are looking for brand awareness, but that only comes when you hit a certain number, I think, of attendees from a large scale standpoint. And the other thing that we're seeing is a lot of people, the B2B2C and prosumer bleeding over into kind of consumer-facing portions of the event. And maybe that's not during the typical, panels, but activations in the evening and special events and things like that, especially being in sports and media, we're definitely getting into that more and more. So, but yeah.
In terms of forward-looking a little bit, everyone is talking about VR and AR and bots and drones. How do you guys imagine events in the upcoming 2, 3, 10 years from today?
Yeah, virtual events is a huge conversation at Teach for America right now, and as it is everywhere. So I am a big believer that virtual is a component of an overall live event, and that when it's done successfully, it can increase your reach and your word of mouth as well as your attendance for the following year, because it tends to give that like FOMO feeling, I don't have a better word for it, and that people want to be there, especially when you can use that virtual component to show how cool the in-person experience is, as opposed to seeing it as like the only component. we've heard from people that have thought like doing the virtual side of things will kind of cannibalize their live event, but all the data that we have has actually shown the complete opposite. That the more you use virtual as a piece of the overall experience, you're actually increasing your reach and your word of mouth and letting attendees or guests talk for you as opposed to having to be the one to talk for yourself, which is usually the better way for us to be.
I 100% agree, and we getting into like some of that emerging technology, immersive media like VR and AR. I've seen it happen in our industry where it's great for a press release and it's great to look innovative, but the use cases are very specific. And I do think VR, for instance, is great for some training, immersive training opportunities and entertaining, but I don't really want to waste my time as an event organizer and I have so many just basic things to worry about with trying to augment the experience in those ways unless it's specifically related to some sponsor activation. I think there's more applicability for AR, but once again, that's more, when the event becomes much more comprehensive, I think it's really important to build the foundation. And I do think from a virtual standpoint, the live streaming of the content and getting on social channels and having share of voice is absolutely critical to just awareness. It's such a crowded landscape in our industry and every industry, and what are you going to do to stand out? And just to add to more technology, beacon technology was kind of really popular for I think a little bit, and it hasn't continued in my opinion, just because for a 3-day event, installing all the beacons and having people to have a certain app and Bluetooth turned on. In reality, it just isn't as effective as you'd like it to be.
I definitely agree. I'm happy we didn't invest in beacon technology. I think that first I'm going to ask you to think about some questions because I think we're going to have time for you to ask our panelists questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you guys to share what's one golden tip that you can share with an audience of hundreds of event planners.
Yeah, my tip, I think, would be that every decision you make, everything you do for your event should be grounded in that initial strategy. And I think that sounds so basic, but when I think about how my experience working on events has been, so often, it's that art and science mix. You think of, or you see something really cool, or you want to do something innovative, and so you think it's kind of fitting, a square peg in a round hole. Like, well, we're going to do this because it's cool, but it doesn't actually align to the strategy and the goals that you set out. And so my thought would be, like, save that idea. Like, don't get rid of it. It's good, but use it when it applies in alignment with a G and the goals that you set out. And so my thought would be, like, save that idea, like, don't get rid of it, it's good, but use it when it applies in alignment with the strategy that you've set forth in the beginning. And connecting everything back in that way will make sure that you have the strongest possible attendee experience.
Yeah, that's great. And so I can speak to my experience from a large scale standpoint and what we're doing on Hashtag Sports. I think nowadays it's all about building a brand and thinking about your event, and your company obviously as a brand, just in your messaging and your social channels and the way that you host the event, you program. We know that people say networking is the reason they go to events, but they don't go. They go because of the agenda, the programming, what you have in front of them, and then I think networking is what keeps them coming back. That's actually what they get the most out of. So using technology, using apps to allow people to efficiently meet, and especially people from target constituencies to efficiently meet on site will make your event, I think, something that they can't miss, because there's nothing like in-person meeting. Virtual is great, but the meeting in person and then extending that relationship virtually is unrivaled, I think.
Interesting. So you're saying that content is the hook, and the networking experience is what keeps having them come back.
Yeah, they look at the speakers. Obviously, the content has to be good, but the networking, I think, is, at least personally for me, but just from all of our attendees, that's really what they like the most about it.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Any questions from the audience?
That's a great question. And I think in the sports industry, there's been class action lawsuits about people that didn't realize they were being, tracked, and it's just an awareness. I think they have to be aware that it's happening. So we actually haven't dove too deep into doing that yet. I think that's something that we definitely want to do. We've been in the first couple of years of our events, so we've been focused on just getting people in the door and the basics. However, when we do get into that, it's definitely, I think, just a transparency thing. Obviously, technically having it in the attendee, when they register, making sure that you have on your website, the use of data and privacy policy, and just from a legal standpoint, you've got it out there. But yeah, people don't read that, and they, if you're using it or you're taking advantage, we do not give away any contact information of our attendees to anybody, prospective sponsors, anybody, because once it gets out there, I've seen it get passed around a lot. It really is. So we really try to protect that as much as possible. Yeah, they're a lot of times abusing it to monetize.
Any other questions from the audience? Cool, thank you very much. Molly, if people want to get involved with Teach for America, what do they need to do?
They can go to our website. There's all kinds of information on there, teachforamerica.org, or you can come find me, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it.
The sports fans?
#sports.com, spelled out. Check it out, subscribe to our daily newsletter, come to our event. Thank you so much, ALON, for inviting us to be a part of this panel. Really appreciate it. Had a great time.
Cool, thank you very much. I definitely invite you guys to catch them after. Thank you. Inside my bones, it goes electric wavy.